Good afternoon. So I'm going to talk about practical applications of zero-knowledge proof. So we are seeing a lot of theoretical stuff, and it's true that when you first hear about zero-knowledge, you think like, okay, sounds weird at the beginning. Then, okay, it looks fascinating, but then a lot of people ask, okay, but what can we do with it? And I will aim to answer to this question. Even so, we have seen already a lot of applications. So, but there are some interesting applications anyway. And I will try to give an intuition of how it works, or at least how it could work. Okay, so I'm Guillaume Drevon. I'm a CTO of Sycoba Research. And at Sycoba Research, we are very excited about zero knowledge. And we are developing a framework, so it's a kind of middleware with 3 ambitious goals. One is to be able to prove the execution of any program in zero knowledge, and using any programming language, and also with any zero knowledge proof scheme. So we are not there yet, but we are working to support at least as many popular language as possible, and also interesting zero knowledge proof schemes. All right. Yeah, so important things to know is that due to our approach, we are really generic, and in theory, at least, we are able to do many things, and in particular, almost all of the examples that I will give can be implemented somehow with Isekai. All right, so the plan. So zero knowledge now it starts to be quite popular, but I have the feeling that there are not that many applications of it. So I will give some examples of real-world applications, but also some example of like possible applications that are not implemented yet. Okay, so these are the subjects I will talk about. And I hope to give a good overview of what are the possible applications. We'll start with the blockchain because it's where you can find a lot of application of zero-knowledge proof. So one reason, of course, it's because it's both blockchain and zero knowledge are cryptographic protocols. So it's more or less the same people that are in zero knowledge are also in working blockchain. Another reason is that blockchain is a kind of a cryptographic secure database, so it's easy to get reliable data to feed your zero knowledge application. Like if you go to a bar and give the barman a zero knowledge proof that you are over 18, it will not work. Okay. So these are a few examples, but there are many more applications, of course. So I will, probably the most well-known is Zcash, so I will, Zcash, so I will focus on it later. I want to talk also about Socrates. So that allows you to implement zero knowledge in an Ethereum smart contract. And this is a very interesting use case because it allows you to outsource some heavy computation off-chain. Because if you do it on-chain, it's very heavy on resources because every node will do the computation. While if you do it off-chain, you can do it only in one place, and then you can provide the proof. And with Socrates, you can verify in the blockchain. So they provide kind of high-level languages to do that. So if you compare, for instance, with Isekai, you can do the same with like a normal programming language with Isekai. Although now we support only C, but that's another thing. What else? Then there is Aztec. So they are a bit similar to Zcash. They are able to do confidential transaction. The main difference is that it's not only for money, but it's for Ethereum. So Zcash is a fork of Bitcoin, and Aztec is built inside Ethereum. Also, then there is a drawback of this is that in terms of cost, gas consumption is quite heavy. Okay, next one is Coda. So they provide the constant size blockchain verification, so it's quite interesting. So this is the size of Bitcoin in megabytes. So now it's over than 200 gigabytes. So if you want to verify the Bitcoin blockchain, you will need first to download this 200 gigabytes and then check every content of it. So you cannot do it on a smartphone, for instance. But with Coda, so they are using proof recursion mechanism. So they provide a proof of a proof of a proof, etc. So they are able to do the verification of a whole chain in a very small size. And then there is also Republic Protocol. So what this means here is simply that, is that they provide a way to exchange resources between different blockchains, and of course in a secure way. Okay, now let's have a deeper look at Zcash. So first of all, why do we need zero knowledge for blockchain? So if you compare to Bitcoin, so it's a good comparison because it's a fork of Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, everything is public, and that's really the principle of Bitcoin, is that it's decentralized, so everyone can check everything. So by construction, everything is public. What is not public is the name. So you have, instead of your name, you have your public key, so you have a number. But it can be partly de-anonymized. So there are some researchers that are working on it. And for instance, there is one in the University of Luxembourg who is working on this. And the more transactions you do, the easier it is to de-anonymize the people that is behind the transactions. Well, one simple example is that if you are registered in a shop, for instance, to have a loyalty card, and then you transact only with Bitcoins, then the shop will know who you are. And they will know what you buy in the shop, of course, they already know today, but they will know they will have access to all your buying history, in fact, not only in the shop, but everywhere. And this information is very useful, for instance, for a burglar. If they can know, because of what you are buying, that you are on holidays, for instance, well, then it's a good opportunity to visit your home. For an health insurance company, of course, it's your medical payment is very useful. And like for a company, of course, it's a sensitive business information. So, and there is, okay, what I want to say also is that this is one of the reasons why banks are highly regulated. Is also because of all these problems that if somebody has access to your payment history. And one last point, which is more specific to Bitcoin, is the fungibility. So every transaction is public, so we can trace also a Bitcoin where it was given to somebody and to somebody. And if, for instance, you have some Bitcoins that goes through some darknet, it's possible that some bank or exchange will refuse this Bitcoin. So the price of a Bitcoin, in fact, depends on the history of the coin. And usually, like new Bitcoin are more valuable than old Bitcoins. Okay, so now that we are convinced that we need some anonymity, how can we do it? So at least how Zcash is doing it. So they are using basic building block, the commitment. So Claude already explained it, so I will not explain again what it is. So basically you have two transactions, mint and spend. Mint is to create Zcash coins. So they use some, consume some Bitcoin to do that. And then... Okay. And then, so a Zcash coin will simply be a serial number, or more precisely, a commitment to a serial number. Okay. And when you want to spend the coin that has been created, you simply reveal the serial number, but not by revealing the commitment, but by providing a zero-knowledge proof that you know that there is a commitment to this number. That's why it's not possible to link spending of a money to a creation of a money. Because you reveal the serial number, the serial number could be here or here, nobody knows. But you provide the proof that it's coming from a valid commitment that has been publicly done. And of course, also you need to provide the proof that it has not already been revealed, this serial number. Okay. So another application I will talk briefly about this is voting. So for voting, there is this balance between privacy and integrity, and this kind of balance is really a common pattern to all zero-knowledge applications, in fact. So you need the privacy when you vote. Your vote needs to remain secret, in fact, your vote. And when you vote, the way to do it is by using an envelope. But the whole process must be transparent. We need to trust that the election was fair. And for this, for instance, we can use a transparent case and a public telling. So because of this, it's a good candidate for zero knowledge. And so one basic way to do it would be for the voters to send a proof that their vote is valid. And the authorities can send a proof that they tallied the vote correctly. But if you do just this, there is a problem because for the authorities to count, to tally the vote, they need to know what are the votes. So it's not private. And there are ways to remediate this. And one way is to use several tally centers, which may be not easy to put in practice for e-voting, but it has been put in practice already 10 years, more than 10 years ago in Denmark, in context of auction. So auction is really similar to voting. Instead of voting for somebody, you do an auction, a bid for with a price. So it's really the same. So we can use the same protocol. And in order so that nobody can know who, except the winner of the bid, of course, who bid which amount, we use 3 servers. So there is one server. So the auction are about bits. So you have thousands of farmers that are producing bits, and you have one company, which is called Danisco, which is processing the bits. Okay. In fact, the auction is not about selling the bit, but about contracts that the farmers have with Danisco, and it's not flexible enough. So they are exchanging the contracts between farmers a lot. So there are 3 servers that processes auction. One at the location of the farmer syndicate, one in Danisco, and one in the company which is in charge of the project. And you can see that these 3 entities have different interests, so they cannot collude each other. And the only way to know who who bid what is if the 3 collude with each other, which in practice doesn't happen because they have different interests. Okay. What's next? Another important use case, supply chain management. So this is also a real-world one. It's done by a company that we know quite well. It's about product authentication. Basically, to be able to give a proof of origin when you buy something in a shop. So how they do that? So the producer, when they produce something, they create a token in a blockchain. So it's a digital twin of the physical product. Then this product, it can be given to a shipping company so that it goes to a factory, then it's processed, transformed, and then ultimately will be in a shop. And when the products change, you simply spend the token and give the token to the people, to the other entities that is taking the product. That way, we can track exactly what the product, we have the full history of the product, in fact. So this is very nice and works quite well. The only problem, of course, okay, it works so well that at the end, the shop can provide the certificate of authenticity, okay? But the problem is that every entity, they don't want to share all this information, and especially with their competitors. So if it is on a blockchain, then everybody knows everything. So they really want to hide this information. And the authorities, they want the reverse. They want to be able to monitor and want to see everything. So as you can imagine, this is solved by using zero knowledge proof to make confidential transaction, as we have seen with Zcash. Plus, authorities can have viewing keys to monitor. Okay. Okay, now financial use cases. So it will overlap a little bit with what Marcus said, but I will not go into as much details. I will try to see how it can be implemented. But yes, it will become, I think, an important use cases, and ING is already working on it. They have a group, a zero knowledge group, working on this topic. Okay, so one use case is a personal compliance. So it's for people when they work in, for instance, in a bank, they must ensure that there is no conflict of interest between their financial holdings and the company interest. And they have to reveal all their financial holdings to their employer. And of course, this has privacy issues. Can also have some problem regarding efficiency, because some companies, they request that every trade made by the employee to be approved by the company first. So not really practical. And of course, it can be solved using zero knowledge. So what we want to do to make is an intersection proof between the employee holdings and the company blacklist. But there are two problems. One is that the employee must not know the blacklist. And same as voting, there are ways to do that. And of course, the employee can cheat. But without zero knowledge, he can also cheat. But the problem is that we know what he said. With zero knowledge, we don't know. So what we need to do is to have a commitment of his holdings, so that when he is under investigation, we can reveal the commitment and check when he lied. Okay. Another use case, so investment compliance, so what Marcus was saying, that the fund must respect some rules, like regarding the risk, for instance. So what is important to note is that it's impossible to trust the fund, because even if the fund is honest, it will have assets coming from another fund, which will have assets coming from another fund, and then can be like a level of 10 funds implied like that. So it's not possible to trust the whole chain in reality. And also, like the phone can not be honest and can easily change the numbers when he wants. Okay, so here the solution will be a range proof. So the idea is to prove, so we compute in zero knowledge, so the asset of the font are in zero knowledge, but the property of the asset that we want to check, this one is public. Okay. And same as before, we provide the proof that he has a valid commitment of his assets. So that in case of problem and the regulator want to investigate, we can open the commitment. Okay, and last one, compliance. So this has been a big problem after the Madoff scandal for the fund industry, because like people were not trusting the funds anymore, except the well-established one. So like for a newcomer in the industry, it was very difficult to be trusted, because people were afraid of Madoff scandal on this Ponzi scheme. And so what can we do against this? So the idea is that to check one way that indicate that there might be a Ponzi scheme is if the value of the fund is growing very fast. So the idea is for the fund to report its value in a way that it can be trusted. So what we can do is that each investor could encrypt their part of the fund using the fund public key and give that to the fund, and the fund can generate the proof that the value is the sum of the value of each of his investors. That would be in zero knowledge. And then the authorities can check that this proof is valid and that the value of the fund is not growing too fast. Okay. Okay, we'll talk about a few other use cases. So for insurance, if you put an insurance in a blockchain, so, okay, why do we need zero knowledge? Is because like usually the contract, especially for contract with involve a lot of money, they want to be confidential. And but the advantage that we can get with a zero knowledge proof is that we can replace the expert with a proof. So imagine that you take the insurance that during your holidays it will not rain, and then you can just take the report of the weather report from a agreed weather service provider, and then generate the proof that it rained, give this proof to the smart contract, and then get paid automatically. That would be nice. Anonymous login. So here again, like anonymous and login is a bit contradictory, so it's a valid use case for zero knowledge. So the idea is to you register to a service in a normal way, so not not in an anonymous way, but in a normal way. But then when you log in, the service will not know that it's you or who you are, but it will just know that you already registered. And so the idea is to issue a ticket that will prove this in zero knowledge. So it will prove that you have a valid registration. And then if you misbehave, the service can simply revoke your ticket. And the next time you want to log in, since you have to also provide a proof that your credentials are not linked to a revoked ticket, you will not be able to log in again. So this is interesting, for instance, for the Tor network. You have already some services that don't want to have Tor users using their service. And with this kind of techniques, it will allow anonymous usage, while you can be certain that your user is not misbehaving. Okay, another interesting use case is image authentication. So here, what do we need? Zero knowledge. So you have already some devices that can sign a picture, so that you know that the picture is not fake. So now it's very easy to fake a picture, so this stuff is important. But imagine that you are like a journalist and you want to publish a photo, but you want to remove part of the photo, like to protect your source, for instance. So what you could do is provide a proof that this truncated photo is coming from an authenticated image. So you just prove that you have applied like basic filtering to the original photo. Okay, do we have time? Yes. I want to talk about physical cryptography. So this one, Isekai cannot do it because it's really, it's not using a computer, but really physical object. So one use case is about nuclear disarmament. So of course we need zero knowledge regarding nuclear weapons because we don't want this information to be shared to anybody, and I don't want. What is interesting for nuclear disarmament is to be able to say that two nuclear warheads are similar. Like one will be a template that we know that is disarmed, and we want to prove that the other one is also same as the template one. So we'll just make a physical implementation of this interactive zero knowledge protocol. So we'll use several pairs of sensors. Each pair is initialized with a different offset. This will bring zero knowledge because it will be a random offset. And then the verifiers choose a random angle and random pair of sensors. And then you just check that the result that he reads on the sensor is the same on the template one and on the other warhead. And if you repeat this many times, you will be sure that the two warheads are similar. Okay, so this is a real implementation. Another one.
Similar without knowing the actual radiograph, right?
Yes, because it has been randomized here. Okay. Another one is about DNA tests. So imagine you have a crime and the police could get some DNA sample of the crime scene. And they have a suspect and they want to test that if the suspect has the same DNA or not. So here, why do we need zero knowledge? Well, you don't want to be in the police file, that's for sure, because it's like there are some examples that people that are in the files of the police just because they are witness of something, and then the police make wrong assumption about these people, and then bad stuff happens to them. And also for DNA, like DNA test is not 100% reliable, of course. So as long as the police has millions of samples, they will for sure will have false positive. And then it's a trouble for you if you are picked. Okay, so the idea is to do the same stuff as what Alex presented at the beginning with the PSYSIC. So you have two samples, one from the crime scene, the C, and one from the suspect, S. And then police can choose randomly S or C, and ask to the defender to test the sample and say if it is from S or from C. So if they are the same, the defender will not be able to distinguish them. But if they are different, he will be able. So after a sufficient round of this protocol, we will have a zero knowledge proof that they are different. Okay, just want to say that there are a lot of interactivity here, and then that in practice the protocol is very difficult to put in place, and there are ways to make it non-interactive. And I will not explain, but yeah. it's possible. Okay. That's it for me. So I hope that you have seen that we can do very nice stuff with zero knowledge stuff. And at Sycoba, we are here to help companies to implement zero knowledge protocols or yeah. Thank you.